last Saturday, obviously JARON ENNIS fought, and we know the second hottest prospect, or contender we should say, because they both contenders at this point in time, is Vergil Ortiz. He's up there with JARON ENNIS. Vergil Ortiz, right after he beat Hooker, he came out and said that, I'm not ducking JARON ENNIS. It's nonsense for us to fight each other right now. We got to clear out the old dogs, but that fight will happen in the future.
Now, a guy that people already group you with because he's also an up-and-comer is Boots Ennis, who's fighting Lipinets next. Do you think that's a fight that happens more down the road, or is that someone you're looking closely as he comes up as well?
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of people say that I'm ducking him. I'm not ducking him. There's no point of that fight being made right now, you know? I want to fight the best. You know what? I feel like we gotta weed out the old boxers right now, and then make room for you know, fighters like me and Boots. You know, that's gonna be a good fight later on down the road, and no one's ducking nobody. Trust me.
So, what's your thoughts on Vergil Ortiz's comments about JARON ENNIS?
In my humble opinion, I kind of agree with what he's saying, simply because I think Vergil Ortiz and JARON ENNIS are the future welterweight kings, the same way how Spence and Crawford replace the likes of Thurman or even Pacquiao. I think the same applies to Ennis and Vergil Ortiz. That's why they're not calling out each other. Like, you don't even hear Ennis really talking about Ortiz. They're talking about fighting like the Crawford, Spence, Porter, like those, even Ugas. I heard Ennis say you would love to fight if given the opportunity. So I see what they're saying, because that fight in the future, I think that's going to be the next welterweight super fight. So I think he's seeing in the future, like, let's take care of the Crawfords and the Spences. So I don't really see an issue in that. He's trying to build that fight up because he sees that as the next potential fight. Plus, neither one of them has a belt. So yeah, I think that's a fight that's a little too soon.
Yeah, I mean, the way the business of boxing works nowadays, back in the day, prospects and contenders will fight each other before facing the champ, right? But in today's time, it's all business. It's all about the belts and building the fights up. So, yeah, I see where you're coming from. Obviously, I don't see it happening unless it's for a unification. But according to what, from what Vergil said, yeah, he sounds like he's not interested anytime soon, because from his perspective, just like from my perspective, JARON ENNIS is as much of a threat as possibly a Terrence Crawford, who's pound for pound #1 and who has a belt. So you better off going that route, because you will have more to earn and more money to make than fighting a JARON ENNIS, who's a contender just like you. So I see where he's coming from. But on the other hand, JARON ENNIS, he seemed not to care who he's going to fight. He said, I'll fight anybody. A lot of fighters have turned down offers. So we don't know if Vergil is one of them fighters.
Honestly, I didn't really hear nothing about him until, I think, when he fought, I think the Herrera kid guy, the older guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, then everybody kept tagging our names and stuff together, but I didn't really know nothing about him. I don't watch him fight and that, so I don't know how his style is. I see like little highlights on Instagram. They be going through the feed and all that stuff, but we definitely can make that fight happen. I love it. I love that fight.
What's your take on stylistically how the fight will play out based on their last performances, since both fighters pretty much fought a former world champion? Vergil Ortiz fought a Hooker, who was a former world champion at 140. The same thing with JARON ENNIS. He fought Lipinets, who was a former world champion at 140. So judging based on their last performances, who would you favor if they do fight, and what's your take on their performances in general?
Now, okay, based off of their last performances, you see, I'm going to have to favor JARON ENNIS simply because, in my opinion, I think Sergey Lipinets was a bigger threat. Lipinets, although Maurice Hooker had only been, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, only stopped by the likes of Jose Ramirez, which who's a top fighter at 140. Lipinets is just a more, in my opinion, like a more dangerous threat at 147. I think he was a tough challenge and a big step up fight. Maurice Hooker, not a lot of people had any faith or thought that Vergil Ortiz would really have any problems with him. And to me, he didn't look nearly as impressive as JARON ENNIS, who seemed to have absolutely no issue at all. Not saying that Vergil Ortiz didn't perform well. He did great. But he took a lot more punishment or damage than expected. Like if you saw at the end of his fight, he had a little redness on his face. So, and you see Jaron Ennis, he looked almost as good as he got in. So I personally think stylistically, I think Jaron Ennis is just not the best matchup for Vergil Ortiz, because I think Vergil Ortiz's problems, this man does not just stay there and take punishment for Vergil Ortiz to just go at the body with him like Maurice Hooker did. And on top of that, Jaron Ennis, people like to talk about Vergil Ortiz's powers. Jaron Ennis has a 90+% knockout ratio, so let's not even talk about power with these two. So if it has to go into a test of power, you can call that a draw. If you want to give it to Ortiz, go right ahead. But in terms of speed, skill, versatility, and defense, I'm leaning towards Ennis, but we'll see.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of great points. First of all, based on the opponents, Hooker did get stopped at 140 by Ramirez, but Lipinets, he lost to Mikey Garcia in a unanimous decision. So obviously Lipinets have never been stopped before, and Jaron Ennis has just been stopping everybody. I think that's pretty much slept on, is the fact that he has a lot of power in both hands on top of his height and reach and skill level. His versatility is out of this world. The fact that he could just switch stands effortlessly, we don't normally see that. Obviously, Terrence Crawford made it a norm, but Jaron Ennis is taking that to another level. When I was watching the Jaron Ennis versus Lipinets, what I try to pay attention to is how will Jaron Ennis react once he get hit, because it tells a lot. When Jaron Ennis, I think it was the second round, he got clapped by a clean right hand. He was calm, composed, cool, calm, and collective. He actually retaliated with his own counter punches, and then he turned Lipinets. That's a great sign from a young upcoming prospect. He did not panic under pressure. That told me right there he's a major threat to anybody, because on the other hand, Vergil Ortiz, I think it was the fourth round against Hooker, he got clapped by a nice right hand, and Vergil started backing up and utilizing his jab. It seemed like he was a little bit buzzed. So Jaron Ennis reacted better to me. Plus, he was, like you pointed out, fought the better opponent. So at the moment in time, Jaron Ennis, like I said, he almost complete. The only thing, he just needs to relax a little bit and stay focused, because he has so much talent that sometimes he gets carried away. And we saw it against Lipinets. Every now and then he will get hit with a clean shot because he's just so carried away and comfortable doing what he's doing. However, I felt like sometimes he'd be rushing his work. During the post-fight, that was a perfect assessment. You have to stay more relaxed, which he did that against Lipinets, at least more so than he did in the past. So I think Jaron Ennis, he's looking like the major threat to the throne, which is the winner of Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford if they do fight. We don't normally see the number one and the number two pound for pound in the same division. Terrence Crawford, he's pound for pound number one in my books, and Errol Spence is pound for pound number two. They in the same division in their prime, right? So it's like the welterweight division can't get any deeper right now. You see Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, Sean Porter, Ugas, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, Jaron Ennis right now, Vergil Ortiz, and the list goes on and on and on. So the division is so deep. This is why the welterweight division is the deepest division in boxing. So in your humble opinion, who is the biggest threat to Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence?
You see, when I saw these two fight, I had to ask myself this question. Stylistically, if I put Crawford in the ring with Ortiz, do I see anything that Ortiz can bring that Crawford hasn't been hit by or can't deal with?
Hold it, you're not that pretty. I'm a bad man. Wait. I took up the wall. I took up the wall.
I bear witness, there's only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his final messenger. That's what I said, Larry, on the Bungle fight. Thanking you.
They call me the problem, but you could call me the can man, because anybody can get it. Africans, Americans, Dominicans, Mexicans, anybody can get it.